welcome to this week's edition of InterUniversity Debate. InterUniversity Debate is brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. With me for this week's InterUniversity Debate, I have Busitema University. Busitema University, you're welcome to the InterUniversity Debate.
Thank you very much.
You.
I'm your moderator for this debate. My name is Lake Gender Fancy. I'm an advocate, a tax consultant, and a lecturer. Before we delve into this very interesting topic, and before I even introduce it to the viewers, let me welcome my panelists for today. Discussing our topic of East African Federation, what is its future? From the first panelist, let me start with Mr. Ngabirano Titus, who is a student of Busitema University pursuing Bachelor of Science in Polymer, Textile and Industrial Engineering. In his fourth year, he also doubles as the Justice, Gender and Constitutional Affairs Minister at Busitema University. Titus, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our second panelist for the debate for today, we have Ms. Iramu Alice Elizabeth. She is also a student of Busitema University, pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Water Resources Engineering and the Vice Chairperson, NRM Chapter, Busitema University. Alice, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Okay, last but not least on our panel today, we have Mr. Masereka Edison. Pronouncing that name is quite a headache for us from the north. So Mr. Masereka Edison, who is pursuing Bachelor's in Education, English and Literature in his second year, and he says he's a student leader in different capacities. So Edison, you're welcome to InterUniversity Debate.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Okay, so we have a panel of two gentlemen and one lady who are going to discuss for us this topic, the future of East African Federation. As we know, we have in place the East African Community. The East African Community Treaty came in place in 1999, and 3 countries acceded to it in 2000, and that was Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. In 2007, we had Rwanda and Burundi also acceding to this treaty that formed the East African Community. Later, we had South Sudan also come into the East African Community, and that was in 2016. And now we have the new kid on the block, and that is the DRC that joined in April this year. We also have Somalia showing interest in joining the East African Community. So we sit down with university students today and discuss the future of East African Community, the future of the Federation. Now, there are different questions that my panelists are going to look at today. What is the background of the Federation? We have had several failed attempts in the past. So today we look at what's the background, what is the legal backing. We have just come back from elections in Kenya. So do we have lessons to learn from Kenya? And then we also look at the new entrants into the EAC and the different challenges that they come along with. We have wars in Somalia, South Sudan, DRC. As the East African Community, are we biting more than we can chew by taking on these countries? We are also going to delve into that, issues of conflicts, and then the issues of common market, common language that the EAC has promised us for decades. Are we also going to have that in place? We have issues of trade wars, the closure of borders, and so forth. All those will be discussed by my panelists for today. So let us kickstart this discussion, and I'll start right with Titus. So Titus, give us a background to the East African Federation.
Okay, I hope everyone is having a good day and is basically here to learn more and be more engaged in this discussion today. So basically, the East African Federation Community or Union, in whatever aspect you'd like to call it, started in 1967 and was then started by very visionary leaders, because we had 3 very key gentlemen at the time, Julius Nyerere, Jomo Kenyatta, and Milton Obote, and all of them are late right now. 10 years fast forward in 1977, the East African Union by then fell apart. Some of the reasons why it fell apart was basically one, the president of Uganda by then, His Excellency the late Idi Amin Dada, and also Kenya felt that they needed more representation on the entire scale. One thing we have to acknowledge is that there is a huge difference between the community we had then and the community we have now. Fast forward to 1999 is that we get to realize that the presidents in 1999 thought it necessary to have some of these federations back in place. We had Arap Moi of Kenya, we had His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni of Uganda, and Julius Nyerere of Tanzania again, because that I think was his last year in leadership, stand to be corrected. So they brought about a treaty in 99, and again it was signed in 2000. But then we had other nations joining in, as you have stated earlier, South Sudan, Burundi, and also DRC. Somalia wants to join, but initially the three core states that comprised of the East African Union was Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. One thing we have to acknowledge is that in 67 to 77, we had a community union that shared an airlines, it shared the postal service, it shared so many things. It was more of a realistic union than you have right now that gives us more of something theoretical on paper other than something we have in practicality. So we're having very beautiful ideas of the East African community currently in their treaties, in the agreements we sign, but then as the East African community currently stands for the movement of people, goods and services across member states, we are failing to achieve some of these things in the current status quo. So basically, as my panelists shall discuss, we get to realize that some of the things we state are meant to be achieved by the East African community now are not being achieved as compared to what was achieved in 67 to 77. You got to realize that even after the fall of the East African Union in 77, we had some countries benefiting more than the other. Because you can say that Kenya currently has Kenya Airways, one of the strongest airways in the African bloc, and that was because after the breakage, every country that had something in its member state retained it. So Uganda retained the postal service. That's why you see Posta Uganda is so good. Kenya retained the airlines. That's why you see Kenya Airways is to die for. No one does not want to use Kenya Airways currently. But then when you compare with what we have now, we have something. So we have very good writers, but they'll give you some very good policy, but then implementation is a problem. Other than that, I think with 7 partner states, the question is every partner state currently benefiting from the East African community? Is their input translating to what they receive from the community? Or we are having something of, yes, we're having an East African community, or we are basically like the African Union or the United Nations, state policies in place, and then fail to deliver on implementation. Over to you, the moderator. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Titus. That was quite a detailed background of the East African community. Earlier, when we were having a discussion, you were trying to differentiate East African community and the federation. Yeah, if you could give us that difference that you were giving earlier.
Okay, so now these are words that in most cases almost mean the same thing, but then the difference is very, very small. A federation in context is more political based. A community or a union is entirely the same thing, is that you have a collection of ideas and you want to achieve the same goal at the end of the day. So even I can form a community of like-minded individuals. Let me say we all want food. So our goal is to make sure that we all get food. That's a community. Now, federation is we shall have a political organization or union amongst us whereby our goal is to have one of us lead us in the getting of food. So basically, it's just, there are 3 words that almost mean the same thing, but then it depends on the context of which you're defining the 3 of them.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'll get back to you later, Titus, on that. So let me welcome Elizabeth into the discussion. So Elizabeth, Titus just gave us an historical background to the East African Federation. So as we know, there must be a legal backing within this federation, within the EAC. So my question to you is, what is the legal backing of the EAC.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. We're looking at the legal backing of the East African community. So basically, we know that the East African community originally comprised of 3 member states, that is Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda, and Kenya, sorry. But we went on expanding, and now we are 7, and the 8th might join us very soon. We can't tell. So with these 7 member states, we have the headquarters sitting in Arusha, Tanzania, and the current chairman of this East African community is the president of Burundi. We have a flag, East African flag. We have the East African motto, which is Jumuiya ya Afrika Mashariki. We also have a common language that is being adopted. Recently, Uganda adopted Kiswahili. Sorry to us who do not know Kiswahili in Uganda, we have to learn it because it's going to become sort of a national community language. And God willing, if we become a federation, which is more theoretical, I don't see that coming anytime soon. It might be the language that we shall use as the East African community or federation. We also have common trade going on in these countries, despite the trade disputes that we have been having, mainly between Kenya and Uganda. Recently, Kenya barred Uganda from exporting to them maize, poultry products, and it's not something that an East African community should be having. More so that we are trying to unite and trade together. It's something that we should try to avoid. We also have the East African Chief Justices Forum, which brings together all the Chief Justices in these countries. And in the near future, it's proposed that we have a standby army for the East African community. In September 2015, we had a committee also sitting to set up a draft constitution for the East African community. It was supposed to have been implemented in 2021, but it failed and it was postponed to 2023. And we are almost there. We are like 5 months to 2023. Are we ready to adopt it is the question, and a lot more. Over to you, Madam Moderator.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth, for that legal backing of the EAC. Titus put it, we can use EAC, federation. The difference is in the political context. Yeah, the difference is in the similarity. Okay, so let me move over to Edison. So Edison, the EAC and the community, why was it formed? And why is this important for a country to be part of?
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Like Titus was earlier noted, the visionary gentleman, the free gentleman that started the idea of the East African community around 1967, well, the idea had begun as soon as East African countries began getting independence, with Uganda 1962, Kenya 1963, Tanzania before that. These men saw it better that as a region would be able to develop if we are more united and do away with these boundaries that the white man had set for us for his own interest during colonization. And this had started way early as 1957 with the Kwame Nkrumahs of wanting to unite the whole of Africa. Well, that was not so possible. And then you have these other leaders who are saying, okay, if we can't unite Africa, at least let's try to have East Africa, the 3 countries of East Africa united. And majorly they were looking at trade and having a common market. They were looking at if we can unite the populations of these 3 countries, that would be a very huge market base that would ensure free movement of goods and commodities across the 3 East African countries, that would ensure free trade, that as a Ugandan, I don't find it hard to go and trade in Kenya. As a Kenyan, they don't find it hard to come and trade in Uganda. So, and that was the main aim of looking at the East African community. Even the federation itself, the 7 countries that we are having right now, that's a population of over 315 million people. That becomes like the 4th largest country in the whole world by population in case the federation is able to be put in place. And that offers a very wide market base for products across East Africa. If I started a company and I wanted to expand to Kenya, I would have a very big market base there. If I wanted to go and trade in the DRC, I would have a very big market base there. So mainly our forefathers who looked at the East African community were looking at basically making it easy for people to trade and for that goods to move. They were also looking at a free currency. If we are to foster trade, then there has to be a currency that unites us all. And when we started in 1967, we had the East African shilling, a currency that we were using across the 3 East African countries, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. And it was working. It was working until its collapse in 1977, and then it had to disintegrate, and every country had to adopt its own shilling. Uganda continued with its, and every country got divided like that. And also they were looking at shared cultural values. As a region, we have a lot in history. Our history was only tampered with when we had the colonialists coming in, and they set up the borders and they divided us, and now they named Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. Some of those borders were not there. What we had at that time were kingdoms. You had the Buganda, you had the Bunyoro Kitara, and a few other kingdoms in the other countries, and maybe those were the boundaries, but those were not really boundaries. We were still united and working as one until the white man came in and set up these other physical boundaries using our rivers and our forests and all those different natural resources. So the East African community basically was looking at bringing together that sharing of the cultural values, that we have the same languages. The Bantu languages are more like the same. If a Bantu speaker in Tanzania is speaking, a Bantu speaker in Uganda can be able to understand. So the East African community basically was looking at reviving that, promoting our shared cultural values, promoting languages like Kiswahili. Kiswahili right now, it's estimated that at about over 200 million people in Africa can be able to speak the Kiswahili language. It's the most widely spoken, one of the most widely spoken languages in Africa. So looking at Kiswahili as a language to unite us, the Tanzanians are doing very well at that, the Kenyans are doing very well. Ugandans, we are doing so good at English and we have forgotten about Swahili, but we are also coming up, and the government is trying to do the best they can to put it in us. Recently, the cabinet declared that across secondary schools and primary schools, Kiswahili must be taught, and I think we are going to forcefully learn it, and we shall get there. Sooner or later, we're going to be like Kenya. And Kiswahili is all over. The DRS is doing very well in Kiswahili, and having such a common language, and it's really going to unite us. We share a lot in culture. We share a lot in history. We have so many things in common as a region, and the community was looking at how best can we bring all these shared values together, and we'll be able to grow as a population. Free movement of goods, labor. They're also looking at making it easy for Ugandan maybe to go and work in Kenya. Someone from Tanzania being able to come and work in Uganda, free movement of labor and all those things. Recently, we were having, when Rwanda was transiting from having French as the main language and adopting English, they so much relied on English, tutors of English from Uganda, because Rwanda was finding it a challenge in being part of the East African community because they used French as the official language. And so like, how do we come on board? They had to adopt English, and to help them in the learning of English, they came for Ugandan tutors. And that offered so many of our young people job opportunities in Rwanda, and some of them went there and made a living. So they were looking at shared market, shared values, free trade, and people moving around and working anywhere. That movements become so easy. I don't have to process a visa for 3 weeks if I want to travel to Kenya, as if I want to go abroad to Europe and all those things. If I have my goats and I stay in Busia, I don't have to try for about a month trying to process a permit to go and trade my goats in Kenya. And our friends at the border have been facing those challenges. You have, for example, the Kalenjin who stay in Uganda have relatives in Kenya. And then you find the border has divided us, and someone cannot easily cross to go and check on a relative who lives on the other side of the world. And the East African community was looking at eliminating all those barriers and making it easy for us as a region to cooperate and foster development. I think basically that is it mainly for why the East African community was formed.
Okay, thank you, Edson, for that. Let me come back to Titus. So Titus, in the words of Edson, what our forefathers looked at when coming up with the idea, first of all, of the EAC, and then trying to form it. Now, my question to you is, as members of the EAC, what can we sit back and brag of as an achievement? So what are some of the achievements so far, starting from when the idea was even formed by our forefathers of having the EAC formed?
when you say achievements, it is an overstatement because of two reasons. One, we are talking about two different eras that had two different achievements and basically delivered something very different at the end of the day. You realize that between 67 and 77, the achievements of only 10 years can outweigh the achievements you have had between 99 and 2022.
Present, yes.
If there is we are having a different context, but then even then, you can say, even in the bad, you can still look out for at least one good deed at the end of the day. So 67 to 77, we had a setup of at an airline. We really had a community whereby it was more realistic that it was really a community and a union. You had free trade. You had really sharing of ideas. We had an East African Assembly that was effective, and in case they passed a law or in case they had something they wanted to implement, it was more achievable. Because when Kenya stated that when Kenya says that we are going to set up our structures like this, we are going to have a Marine Corps, and then a Marine Corps is situated in Tanzania, that Marine Corps was delivering results. Now, as compared to now, that most of the things we're having currently are beliefs that we believe that we as an East African community, we can have a community whereby there is as the advantages are very clear, that there is free movement of goods, people, labor, services, and capital, and also right of establishment. We have these things stated in our treaties, but then some of the things we're achieving right now are more trade-based. You get to realize that, and basically it's also movement, but then the movement is, I have gone to Kenya without a visa, and then I can stay there for a specific period of time without having to worry about the law and all those things. Those are some of the achievements we have in the current East African community. You gotta realize that currently we're having a community that is delivering in achieving some things on the top shelf, but not then down to the common person. If, let me say, I'm a trader in Busia and I am selling trousers or jeans or anything, it is not a walk in the park for someone in Kenya, Busia, Kenya, to come and buy things from Busia, Uganda. It is not that easy as it was in 67 to 77. The thing is, even in the context of a community, there is nothing like subsidized taxes on goods. There is nothing like, let me say, that free movement. Even when you go to the border, you'll have to have those over 200 documents just to cross the border from from Uganda to Kenya. So you get to realize that some of the achievements we have are, yes, I think the biggest achievement of the current community is having more member states. Because you get to realize that we're having more people joining the bloc, but then are we really achieving from them joining the bloc? The question is, are we really achieving from us having 300 plus million people being part of our bloc? Or we are basically having more people join in because they are lacking identity. DRC would have joined the Central African bloc, but then they just generally lacked identity and couldn't join that bloc. You're having Somalia, who could have joined the North African bloc because they are really more related to the North Africans as compared to the East Africans. But then, why are they joining the East African bloc? It's possibly more welcoming and not more leaning to some structures like the North African bloc would be. At the South African bloc, I think it's COMESA, something like that. But then their blocks are more realistic. You get to realize that you're joining the COMESA bloc and it's entirely trade. You get to realize that you're joining the West African bloc. I think it's ECOWAS, yes. Yeah. But then you're joining that because it is entirely trade, nothing political. But then I feel, I would not say people have the joy of leading others, which is very good, and I believe in people leading others. But then are your intentions purely to develop the common man? Because if we're really an East African bloc, we wouldn't have Kenya outweighing Uganda by over 100%. Because if you compare the GDP of Kenya and Uganda, or Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi, there is a huge gap. If you were really an East African bloc, you'd have something almost close. If you go to West Africa, Niger, Nigeria, Ghana, and I think Chad, Togo, Benin, you're having something collective, and you're having a GDP whereby growth is collective. There is a difference, yes, but then there is that consistency at the end of the day, which you're failing to achieve in East Africa.
Okay. So before I move to Elizabeth, let me first ask you about something you just talked about. The developments of the previous ESE outweighing the current one from 1999 to now. Why do you think it is so that the previous one is outweighing the ESE from 1999 to date?
Okay, now First is that what we wanted is that what the people in 99 wanted was to achieve something that was achieved over 20 years back, 67, 77. Some of the things were having a common airline, having a common trade post, having a common marine corps, having a common, like everything was so common that even it's like having a common sugar bowl at home. Everyone can access the sugar, yeah? But if you go to campus, I have my sugar, she has a sugar, he has a sugar. You cannot use my sugar. Now that is the current East African community we have right now. We are all partner states, but then we do not have the right to cooperate on the same level as my other state. In 67, 77, the people then, I think visionary is degrading over years, I don't know why, but then the people then had more of a common mindset that it is better when we work together as working as a single entity. Can we have the mindset that even without a treaty in place, nations can work together? We have the UN. A very good example is the, let me say, the World Health Organization. Uganda, we abide by it. All these countries abide by it. But then some states refuse to put curfew when even the World Health Organization was stating that during COVID, people should not do this, people should wear masks. Some member states refuse to abide by those things. So East African community might come, because we even have the East African Parliament, even have a Students' Union of East Africa. Are we achieving that as compared to the time frame of 67, 77, whereby we are more of a community other than member states just abiding by something written on paper?
Okay. Okay, let me move to Elizabeth. Let's talk about the new entrants. So, as we earlier stated, EAC, the new EAC started with 3 countries. Then we had Rwanda and Burundi joining in 2007. Then we had South Sudan in 2016, and now DRC. And recently, the East African community decided to fast track the application of Somalia, meaning we might have Somalia anytime soon joining the EAC. Yeah. My first question on the new entrants is, what is attracting them to the EAC?
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. What is attracting the new entrants to the EAC? Basically, we see EAC is quite wide. And if we are to merge as the 7 countries, we are estimated to have a population of about 315 million people. That is like the largest in Africa and 4th largest population in the world, if it is. So if we are to have Somalia in, I think these countries are looking at basically trade, because most of these countries, I see a country like Burundi. Burundi has very low GDP every year. So what is attracting it to join? It is seeing some things that it can benefit from these other countries. It's seeing its products being bought by these other countries. Free trade, basically. It has to import and export. I see a country like these, some of these countries are landlocked. So they are looking at benefiting from the countries that can access the sea, like Kenya. I see DRC basically, DRC is, the minerals are basically congested on the eastern part of DRC. The other part of DRC is full of forests, rivers, and it's inaccessible. The road network there is very poor. So if DRC is to trade, the best way is through Kenya to the shores and export their products. But if they decide to put them through the eastern part and go through the road network, through those impassable forests, they're definitely bound to make losses, and it's not realistic trade. They're going to actually invest more and gain less from that. So they're looking at merging with East Africa and being at good terms with Kenya. They can easily export their products through Kenya. Likewise to Uganda. Uganda is landlocked, and I think that is why Uganda is trying to fight more than the other countries for this East African Federation, if we are to notice. It's like our president is pushing more for it than the other countries. They're a bit reluctant. So these countries, I think most of them have their aims. They have reasons as to why. Also, I look at a factor of unity, peace in the area.
Okay.
Yeah. So these countries are looking at, Uganda is a bit stable. We don't have a lot of cases of insecurity. So when we are like one country, we can easily give
Edison and Titus are smiling when you say we don't have so many cases of insecurity.
We do not have so many cases of security. And maybe when we are flashing back to the political bit of it, when we have elections, that is when we have a lot of ruckus. basically compare it to Somalia, compare it to South Sudan. These are politically unstable countries, not only politically. Talk of DRC and compare them to Uganda. Not that we are at 10, but comparing them to these others, we are like at 6 and they are like at 2, 3.
Okay, Titus, why the disagreement?
Why the disagreement
on the issue of security? Because Elizabeth says Uganda is a bit stable. She puts it at 6, and the rest of the countries at
like 4,
2.
Yeah.
So,
you know, when you say security is something very wide, and I think
it's something the head of state himself has bragged about.
Okay. Yeah. The question is, you are bragging about something you're not implementing. The security of Uganda was good. You know, when we're talking about current affairs, I feel security of Uganda was so good that you could do anything you want, which is legally right, and you'd be safe. But then question is, we are looking at Somalia of 2011, 2010, in comparison to the Somalia of 2022. We're looking at the DRC of 2008 of the ADF in comparison to the DRC of 2022. If we're to put these 7 partner states on a current weighing scale right now, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, even DRC right now is practically more safe than Uganda currently.
Sure.
But Titus, Uganda will, let me quote some of the things that normally comes out from the head of state.
Yeah.
It says, we had war in the north, we crushed them. You know, ADF, we have pushed them
to Congo.
Exactly.
We sent our army to Somalia.
Exactly.
My point is, it is not the aspect of pushing them. It is the aspect of where are we now in context of where we were then. DRC and Somalia have learned from their mistakes. Uganda is not learning from their good times. For me, I believe that Uganda is safe because people can go to bars and come back at 6 in the morning and they'll be okay. But the question is, are we really safe in comparison to the 7 partner states right now? I am not talking about the Uganda of 2018. I'm not talking about the Uganda of 2015. I'm talking about the Uganda of 2022. Are we in a safe state in comparison to the 7 partner states?
Okay, let me move to Edison. So Edison, let's talk about these new entrants. The discussion already started from Elizabeth. We have Somalia and we have wars in Somalia. South Sudan, wars in South Sudan. Congo, the same thing. Now, when the EAC was fast tracking the application of Somalia recently, the president of Somalia said, we are so connected to East African countries, the member states of EAC, to the extent that we really deserve this spot, you know. They talked about the fact that before even the Indian coolies came to build the East African Railway, the Somalis were brought in to, you know, handle issues of transportation and then the issues of marking the railway. So they feel they deserve to be, and several things that came out from the president of Somalia. He talked about how connected Somalia is with all the members of EAC. Considering the wars in Somalia, the wars in Congo and South Sudan, as EAC, do you think we are biting more than we can chew?
Thank you. And it's interesting. One of the key qualifications for a country to qualify as a member of the East African community is sharing a borderline with one of the present members of the East African community. And already our friends from Somalia are sharing a border with our member, Kenya, and which qualifies them. They have so many stakes, and sooner or later they're going to be admitted. And like you're saying, we share a wide history with them. Like their president was saying, the Indian coolies and before they came in on the railway, they participated. And we have had for several years our troops being taken to Somalia to manage peace there. Our president loves Somalia so much, and it's one of like his babies. I am sure sooner or later we are going to have Somalia joining the East African community. And then we are having South Sudan, which broke away from Sudan in 2011, and then in 2016 we see them join the East African community. And then we are having the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has officially joined the East African community with their various problems. And you're saying, are we biting more than we can swallow? And I'm going to say, yes, we are really biting more than we can swallow. If we are looking at a political federation and having this one big superpower, this one big East African country, I don't think we are going to be in position to manage the big crisis if we fail to manage the small ones. If we have failed to manage security, if a country like Somalia has failed to manage its security internally, as small as it is, if a country like South Sudan has failed to manage its security as small as it is, how about when you say, okay, we are now this one big country, whereby anyone from South Sudan can freely access Uganda, whereby anything that is happening in South Sudan or in Congo can easily access to Uganda? Are we not going to have more of this violence that is happening there expanding? Are we not going to have more of these terror attacks which we've been witnessing in Somalia expanding easily to the rest of the East African countries, because we have opened our borders? We are now one big country. Anyone can come into trade. We are now one community. Our borders are going to be so porous and so open that we are going to be more prone to violence, more prone to wars, more prone to political instability, and you can name them. So I think really as a region, we are carrying way more than our shoulders can bear. Already, like Titus had pointed out, we haven't effectively managed what we share right now. The East African community itself, trade and a few of these other things which we are trying to look at, haven't been effectively managed. And now we want to bring in even more burdens on our shoulders of now having a political federation. I really think it's not a step in the right direction. Yes, it's a very brilliant idea. I admit that it would be good for us, but for now, as a region, I do not think we are ready. We are bringing in way more than we can manage. We are going to have more of this violence and instability escalating to the rest of these countries. So for now, let's look more at developing and strengthening what we already share before we think of moving to an instant political federation. Let's first think of how best can we do what we're already doing, and once we have perfected that, maybe in the future we can look at a political federation.
Okay, let me bring Titus into that discussion. So Titus, Somalia joining the EAC. Now, aside from the things that came out from the president, there are issues of Somalia being very active, especially in Uganda, in terms of oil. We have seen petrol stations being owned by several people from Somalia. And then we have seen the education sector in Uganda. There are certain universities they have so many people from Somalia studying in those universities. And then the trading, Somalis in Uganda and in East African countries being very active in trading. Do you think it is wise for EAC to admit Somalia?
EAC can admit anyone, because some of the basics for being admitted to the EAC is sharing a border. We have become so short-sighted as a community that some of the things we are zeroing down for someone to join our community is sharing a border. We have, as you have stated, there are Somalis in Uganda who are doing very, very well, because I think one of the best places in Toro right now is owned by Somalis, Kafesha, a very good place. But the question is, do we need to have Somalia part of EAC to acknowledge that we can partner with them, or can we partner with them without them being in EAC? What I think is best for Somalia is they need regional identity, and the best place they can get regional identity is in the East African community. But as my co-panelists have stated earlier, is we have people in the reason why we had East African community start in place was to eliminate the borders, the invisible borders put there by the white man after colonization. Now, in the aspect of trade, I think Somalia has more to gain from EAC than the East African community has more to gain from them. When you talk about labor expatriation from Somalia, is that we're having more people in Somalia giving us very good labor in terms of trade, people who are so much visionary, business-sighted than the rest. And the funny bit is that we as Uganda, as a country, we are so welcoming that to the extent that you'll find a settlement in Kampala entirely Somali, a settlement in Kampala entirely Indian, a settlement in Kampala entirely probably Kenyan or Chinese or something like that. Us as a country are very hospitable. We cannot take that away. But then also the other 7 partner states as welcoming as we are to these individuals in their countries. You get? So, but again, when he stated the aspect of security, us providing security to them, I think Somalia now needs a ground whereby when they wake up and have a conflict in Somalia, they'll have the right to ask for security from Uganda without going into the entire bureaucratic process of having AMISOM, because having soldiers from Uganda in Somalia is more expensive than having a soldier stay in Uganda. Because when a soldier is in Somalia, he's paid more than when he's in Uganda. So it is beneficial to the person working there. So you get to realize that if the moment they join the bloc, we are losing a certain aspect as some of these soldiers who have been doing security there. I believe Somalia has more to gain when they join than this African bloc has to gain from them joining us.
Okay, thank you, Titus. So let me bring Elizabeth into that discussion. But let's look at it from a different angle. Let's talk about trade wars. You know, I think it came from you earlier, the issue of maize.
Yeah.
So we have had Kenya say Ugandan maize, I think Uganda and Tanzania. Your maize, we are saying no to it. It has some chemicals, you know, it has some toxins. You scientists should be knowing better.
Maize and milk.
Yes, maize and milk. So we are closing our market. The EAC is talking about common market.
Yeah.
You know, common market. So what is your perspective? What is your perspective about Kenya being part of EAC and saying Uganda, we are saying no to your milk and maize?
Thank you so much. I would term that as greed, sort of, because Kenya basically gave that after COVID-19 hit their country, and the local people were like, you're bringing maize, poultry from other countries, and yet we have the produce here that we are not even selling off, and you're bringing more. Like, it is in bulk. We can't even sell off our own. So Kenya decides to stop other countries. No, stop. Your maize has this, your milk has this, your poultry is this. We are now consuming our products. Basically, okay, Uganda made a very, very huge loss when that happened. We lost about 3 billion from that barring of the trade. And Uganda decided to also repatriate by also putting an embargo on Kenya. And that brings disunity, because we had agreed, Kenya had agreed to import more of Ugandan sugar. And all of a sudden they're like, no, stop, we no longer need that. So by bringing in that, a lot of losses were made in the country. And I don't know how Uganda took that, basically, because I see Uganda also starting to decide, no, don't bring in your products anymore. We no longer want that. And we see our poultry, our milk, we see our maize. The maize prices went down. Farmers were highly affected. Milk, Lato milk, which was even supposed to be exported to Rwanda, to DRC, to Dubai.
Well,
They later decided, they decided to, when Kenya stopped the milk from going into their country, those countries also decided to start doubting the milk. Why? If your neighbors have refused it, why are you bringing it to us?
If members of EAC that
your very members have refused it, then why are you bringing it to us? So what Kenya did was they really misbehaved, and they should open those borders, I believe. As East African community, it's one of the things that we have, common trade. And one of the reasons as to why we have that is because I think we have to basically set up a standard quality market. Like, if Uganda is producing milk of this quality, that is the same milk that should be produced in Rwanda. That is the same quality that should be in Tanzania. So we shall eliminate that aspect of doubt. This milk from Uganda, and I don't think we should label it Ugandan milk. It should basically be East African milk. Or rather, I would prefer that each member state decides to produce a commodity that it's best at, depending on the resources they have within. Like, Uganda can be like, we are majoring in producing milk. Then Kenya can be like, okay, we are doing maize. Then Rwanda can be like, we are doing this, and we have a common market we can have them consumed by our own and even exported outside, not basically having to fight within us.
Okay, Elizabeth, we are going to take a short break, and after that break, you will pick right from there.
Okay.
So let's take a short break and still get back to the discussion on the East African Federation.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from that short commercial break. We are still having students of Busitema University, and we are discussing the future of the East African Federation. And before we took a break, we were having Elizabeth discussing the issues of trade wars in the East African community. So Elizabeth, you can continue from there.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. So I was basically talking about the trade wars in East African countries. And it hit me hard that the export destination for most of the Kenyan products is Uganda, with about 11.2% of the exports that Kenya has, releases to the world, come to Uganda. We are like their biggest support when it comes to their exports. And for Uganda, Kenya is the second largest export destination for Ugandan products. So when we see these countries coming up with these disputes and refusing products from the other countries, it raises a lot of questions. We are neighbors, we are in the same community. Literally, we are like the same country, and you're refusing products from my country. You're making me make losses, and this alone will bring about disunity among the traders, among the leaders, and that is when it will spark a fire in the East African community, which is literally supposed to be one country. So I think that is basically it. Back to you, Madam Moderator.
Okay, so Titus, I saw you earlier disagreeing with Elizabeth through body language on the issue of trade wars with Kenya. So I would like you to come in at that point.
Okay, at times we shouldn't be harsh and be rushed when blaming some of these things. When we are transferring blame to some of these states for doing what they are doing. May I believe that if Kenya saw it that the milk or the maize from Uganda was of low quality, why would you accept it in your country? Now, we have to differentiate between Uganda as a country exporting and private entities as entities exporting. I believe that as an East African bloc, we have standardization metrics, which we do not even have an East African standardization body, whereby we now be certain that the products being released are of East African standard. Now, the milk and maize in Uganda will be of Ugandan standard, but will not meet the standards of Kenya. Now, if they do not meet the standards of Kenya, Kenya has the right to not accept those products in their country. We should not be rushed to put blame that, oh wow, because I accepted your sugar, your milk, your things, Bambi, you should also accept my things. That's not the way some of these things work. Because the moment you accept something edible, like milk, food, you are indirectly or directly putting the health of your citizens at risk. So, I believe that the moment Kenya says that we are not going to accept some of these products from Uganda, they have the right to do so if they do not meet the bare minimum of standards set by their standardization body. At the moment Uganda comes out to cry foul that they're rejecting their goods, are their goods worth the standards necessitated in Kenya? Yes or no? If yes, and then Kenya has is refusing them just out of the blue, then that's another different metric. But if they're refusing them on the basis of standards, it is all acceptable, and we should accept that something is bad, and it is bad. If it is good, then let it be good on the entire board. Is it okay?
Okay, let me bring Edison into that discussion. So Edison, the issue of trade wars, it's a topic that is quite wide in East Africa. Not just Kenya rejecting Ugandan milk and maize. Kenya also rejected maize from Tanzania. Rwanda in 2019, just recently, I think around February, closed its border to Uganda. Uganda still has 100% tax on imported sugar. We have had these issues of trade, and the EAC sings a common market. Not even just the EAC, we have had other international bodies like the World Trade Organization. World Trade Organization has its principles. And among the principles of the World Trade Organization, we have things like non-discrimination. So bringing it back to the EAC and the trade wars within. So what is your perspective on all these trade wars within the EAC?
Thank you so much. On one hand, you're having the trade wars that have existed between maybe Uganda and Kenya that are mainly caused by the standards, because the products are low quality and then they are rejected. Maybe we can take that. No country would want to bring low quality products on their market if they have checks and balances for those things. But then if you look in the case of the Uganda and Rwanda trade wars, it was more of a political thing, because our leaders did not agree in one way or another, and they were stepping on each other's toes here and there, and there were issues to do with politics and all those things. The border was closed, and what is happening in turn is that it's our traders who are suffering. It is the common people that have been trading in Rwanda that are suffering. It is the common people from Rwanda that have been freely accessing the Ugandan markets with their products that is suffering. And that pushes me to the other thing. Can we build an East African community that is going to survive way beyond individuals? Because if we build a system that is going to survive because of particular individuals, then that is not sustainable enough and is not going to last. What happens when tomorrow those leaders are out of the picture? Do we have the system collapse? So what happens then when leaders begin crossing fingers and stepping on each other's toes here? Do we have then trade embargoes coming in and barring people from trading there because the leaders have disagreed? So I really think the East African community that we need is that looks way beyond our leaders. That even if our leaders on top are disagreeing, it does not affect what is happening on ground. You look at the case of South Sudan, our traders have faced a lot of challenges there. Ugandan traders have had the worst in South Sudan. Their properties are seized, some have lost their lives there, attacks on what they are trading there. It's not been a safe environment for them over there. And yet Uganda is very welcoming. I think we are one of the most welcoming and friendly countries in this world. Look at the refugees that we are having vis-a-vis other countries. Everyone comes here and we don't say no to anyone, no matter where we are from. But what are we getting in turn? Are we getting the same? Yes. We are not. One of the Afghanistans came here and he began singing songs and he was and he was making money. So can we receive the same hospitality when we go to other East African countries? Can we be treated the same way, even better than we treat them? So the issue of Ugandan businessmen and women finding it rough, their properties being taken and them losing their lives is not a good thing in South Sudan. And that has discouraged so many of our traders from taking their products to South Sudan. Yeah. Congo itself has not been a fertile ground for Ugandan traders. It's not so easy to trade in Kenya like it is for them to trade in Uganda. And somehow you see Uganda being kind of a dumping site. We don't have so many restrictions on products coming from other countries. Anyone can get anything here. But it's not so easy for us to take stuff out there. So can we have a leveled ground where everyone can freely play and access these services, that we don't have these so many restrictions and everyone has the freedoms to trade, and we don't have our trade and marketing depending on individuals, that even if the political leaders are not so much in good books, we can still have trade continue, that our traders across all the East African countries can freely go to any East African country and they freely trade without fearing for their lives, without fearing for what they have, the stock being stolen and all those things. Can we have standards on prices? And maybe the issue of specialization would help us, like the 100% taxing on Kenyan sugar. Yes, I know as a country we produce a lot of sugar. We have over 10 sugar factories in this country, and indeed we have to promote what we have. But maybe the future of the East African Federation should look at an East Africa where we're going to specialize. Maybe a country specializes in products.
Yeah.
We are blessed with the arable land. I think the East African region has the biggest share of the arable land in Africa. The East African region is blessed with the lakes that we are, the Great Lakes region. We are blessed. We have more water, access to water than any other East African country. So can we look at more of specializing so that we don't have all these pulling ropes here and there, because the country will be maybe producing something specific depending on what they can manage after we have agreed on certain things. So we can really do better than fight over frivolities of politics and products and all that if we have special checks and balances and we have the right policies put in place, and not just putting them in place following whatever we have that is written on paper. Because like we have agreed, the tragedy of the East African community is that it's more theoretical than practical. We have very beautiful paperwork, but we put it under the carpet and then we do something completely else. So can we be true to what we have written on paper?
Okay, so Elizabeth, concluding the issue of trade wars, what can we do as East African community in order to achieve a common market with all the challenges that have come up from the panelists and the ones that exist within the ESA?
You can't tax a member state 100%. That is too much. For a member state, you can lower. Then if it's outside the member states, we can hike in the tax. That is very okay. And I also think, like he said, specialization would do better. If different member states specialize in producing different products, and I don't think we shall have those things of pointing fingers. My milk is better than yours. My maize is better than yours, so don't bring it. So I think such things can help us to trade better. Also, East Africa has a lot of ethnicities, a lot of people, different people speaking very different languages. Uganda alone has, I don't know how many tribes, an estimate of about 50 tribes speaking very different.
Over 50 actually.
Over 50 speaking very different languages. So at least Tanzania has tried to harmonize. Tanzania, at least, it ranked out of 81 countries, it topped the list of countries that speak almost the same language. Like I can come from Arusha and speak to someone from Dodoma and they'll listen Kiswahili. So I think East Africa should come up with a common language, and I'm happy that the countries are trying to embrace it. We are trying to become a Kiswahili speaking region. This will ease trade because communication is key in trade. If I can't speak, then you won't know what I'm going through and what. So one of the things that we should embrace is this common language. Also, we should have like a body to standardize the products, to stop this blame game. We should have like an East African standards operation, something, so that all products go through it and are acceptable by all the member states. Not me saying Ugandan products are not good enough, so they can't cross over to Kenya. So if they're going through the East African standardization system, we are going to know they're good enough for all the countries to consume. And that way we shall go forward. Then I also think it comes back to unity. Politics, we should be politically stable, like stable countries for trade to go on peacefully. The countries should be stable, and that is it basically.
We are still in Kenya because I've seen an election petition coming up and so forth. However, we have seen reports from different bodies coming up to say there was the election was not. We've even seen even Ugandans coming to compare the election in Kenya was free and fair. The election in Kenya did not have closure of social media. We did not have power blackouts. You know, all this. So my first question to open up this topic is, what is the governance trend in the different East African countries, the 7 EAC members?
Okay. Basically, there's a difference. There's a huge difference between the 7 member states. But Kenya is a good example of someone who learns from their mistakes. The Kenya election of 2007, and the election of 2022 are very different. You realize that Kenya is learning from their mistakes and trying as hard as they can to make that the next election is much better than the previous one. We all have to acknowledge that no one is perfect. There have been so many shortcomings in Kenya that do not call for that chaos or probably having riots, violence, and all that. But then you can say that Kenya did a good job, have done a good job so far, because there's a lot you expect, because there's a possibility of the election even being entirely repeated, which we do not want to focus, that will lead to violence. But then they have learned from their mistakes and are evolving. Uganda, on the other hand, is going from bad to worst, because the way elections were in 2001 and the elections of 2021 is that we're having a smooth decline curve. Rwanda. Now, if you compare member states, you got to realize that Kenya is the only nation we are having that is learning from their mistakes. Tanzania has a theoretical multi-party politics, but entirely run by one single political party, Chama cha Mapinduzi. So you get to realize that there is the way these 7 member states are run is so different that even then, if we are to have an entire East African Federation, which is entirely political, we may have more clashes than other understanding and a common goal at the end of the day. Now, we have countries that follow their constitution and amend when it's necessary. Of the 7, you have countries that amend a constitution to favor a certain group of people when it comes to the political trend. You find it that in Kenya, for you to amend the constitution, it comes to probably terms, the length of a term. It is not that work. It's not that easy. When you come to a member state like Uganda, it is so easy. Give each member of parliament like 20 million, and
Tomorrow you take them to Chankwanzi.
Exactly. Anyway, if you like you come to Rwanda, is that the entire political spectrum and the term of elections is so different and even very hard to understand when you're out of there. Because 1, we do not get clear information from them. 2, there is a way the entire political thing in Rwanda is so not clear. It is very hard to understand how the politics in Rwanda run. You get to realize that the way the other countries govern, you will be like, oh wow, the things are flowing so well.
It's a North Korea of sorts.
It's something like North Korea. You do not understand anything. It is some democratic dictatorship happening there. When you come to DRC leaves many of us in tears, because there is a lot that has to be done. There is so much that has to be done in DRC, Somalia. But again, the most hurting part is countries like Uganda that had to be the yardstick and learning point for some of these nations is again again moving like 50 years back in history. So how then will a member state that is willing to join like Somalia be like, I would love to be like Uganda when it comes to elections, when we are going back 50 years? We are now in 2026, which all Ugandans will be like, I wish you are like Kenya. Yet Kenya was wishing it was like Uganda. So we are having one go up, another go down. 20 years from now, the ones that were going down will go up, the ones that were going up. So it's like a seesaw. It's just there entirely. It is something that you cannot zero down on a specific. It is so hard because the elections have surprised us, even us who vote at times, because when you're voting 2021, you are casting the ballot, but then you're worried is that, will I be able to see the daylight tomorrow because of this violence? A Kenya now is so calm that yes, we voted and we're okay. To the extent that we could not tell who was winning until the chairperson EC was done to declare. And again, the drama, East Africa doesn't disappoint. The day they were electing, people were fighting. 4 people of the East African, the election, board come up. So we don't disappoint. We are just naturally East African and we are proud to be. So there's something that, so we just hope that 5-10 years from now, Kenya can learn from this mistake this year, and so the next election they will have, it will be much better. But then Uganda has a long way to go.
We learned nothing
Tanzania
and
has
forgot
to
nothing.
make us realize that it's now multi-party. It's not Chama cha Mapinduzi and some other parties that whose names we don't even know at times. And so even other member states, DRC can copy, can learn, it's more benchmarking, learn something from Uganda, okay, for Uganda it's very hard to tell. Let's learn something from Kenya, learn something from Tanzania. So all those things. And I'm sure 20 years from now, East African bloc will be a yardstick for other nations.
Okay, so let me move to Elizabeth.
Yes, ma'am.
So Elizabeth, all these issues coming up when it comes to issues of elections, we have countries that have term limits, countries that don't have term limits. We have countries like Uganda, they have been singing about electoral reforms. Courts come out and say, you know, yes, the election was not free and fair, but there's the substantiality test. And then they say, you know what, we cannot nullify this election, but EAC, please give us electoral reforms. And then there is totally no follow-up on electoral reforms. What role can EAC as a bloc play in the elections in these different countries? Is there any role that EAC can play?
Thank you so much. Yeah, EAC can actually intervene in this, but I don't think it will have a bigger hand in this. Because these countries, are willing to merge, but not politically. These countries want to retain the political bit internally, and the other part is free to be shared, but not the politics of these countries. Uganda wouldn't love Kenya talking about its politics, and neither would Kenya love Uganda talking about its politics. You see, these countries, we've seen Kenya transition. They've had several leaders, and we've had one. Kenya has had 5 leaders, and Uganda has had 1 in that same time period. Consistently, and we are voting. For Rwanda, I don't think they should even be voting anymore. Because for the past 22 years, they've had 1 president. And this president, in his recent term, the recent election that he had, he got about 99% of the votes. What is that? Meaning they fully believe in him. I think that was 2018. Yeah. They fully believe in him. So I don't think Uganda can come in and be like, after 3 years, you can't come in again. Because Rwanda is submissive. They're like, this is the leader for us.
But he delivers.
And he delivers, but in kind of a it's sort of dictatorship, because I do not think every Rwandan would want that. Even if there were 99% votes. I think there should be term limits. East Africa should come up with term limits. After, I love the way United States does it. After 3 terms, you can't be president again. After 2 terms, you can't be president again.
2 4-year terms.
If East African community came up with these term limits, I think it would do as well.
Do you think it's something that the East African presidents, starting with Uganda, would even want to hear?
Thank you. That is the whole point. There is greed. People want to cling on power. With due respect.
Kenya has term limits.
Yes, it does.
Kenya has term limits. But do you think Uganda would buy it? Do you think Rwanda would buy it?
Do you think it is
but
something?
If they could come and harmonize,
it is something that EAC can suggest and it will be adopted by the 7 countries?
EAC.
It could be.
EAC has a summit. EAC has a summit that brings all the presidents together. So do you think it is something? Okay, let me put it this way. Let me put it actually direct to Edison. EAC has this summit, which is an organ that brings the 7 presidents.
Yes.
If Kenyan president comes up, let's say Ruto is declared the president. Okay, he has been declared the president. Let's say he stays as the president and he comes up during the summit and suggests, can we have term limits in all our countries? Do you think the 7 countries will adopt?
Wow, that's a hard one. That can only be adoptable if we put the egos aside. Yes, I know when they are voting and passing some of those things, it needs quorum. And maybe we can have a number of countries outnumbering others and we have those things passed. But even some of those countries which would be in position to influence that would in one way or another fear certain people, and they would not come out openly on what needs to be done. So there is a way the East African community does not have a voice. And like I was noting earlier in the beginning, we have built an East African community that survives on individuals. And then we have to please egos and massage each other's egos and all that, each other's tempers. And that's the East African community that we're having. Now, if we can build an East African community that looks past these individuals and making each other feel good about each other and all that, then maybe we can speak as a voice as the East African community, and we're able to pass such things as term limits. Otherwise, if we are still in what we are doing right now, it is not so possible. And then also, some of these countries have their own history, and they want to build their political systems looking at where they're coming from. You will blame Rwanda for what is happening, but they'll tell you, we know where we are coming from, and whatever we are doing, we are looking at our history, and you will not point fingers at them. They will ask you, where were you when we were going through what we went through? You will talk to Uganda and they will say, you know what we always say, and all those things.
We need another
They'll actually say our history in our preamble of the constitution.
So the histories of these different countries dictate so much in the political decisions. And I think that's where the problem lies. History is a very important thing, but we can outgrow history. It is only for us to learn from. It is only for us to learn from, not that whatever happened 30 years ago should still influence what we are having today, that we cannot adopt what is better for us as a region.
Okay.
It does.
Okay. Then still to you, Edson, let's go back to Kenya. Like we said earlier, we are still in Kenya. 2007, the post-election violence in Kenya. Actually, even so, the Kenyan president being tried by the ICC and the vice president, both Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto being tried by the ICC. So then we see 2022, as Titus put it, they learned from the 2007 and 2022, they were able to deliver a better election. What lessons do you think a country like Uganda has to learn from Kenya?
Thank you. Kenya has set up systems, and the systems at least work, which Uganda lacks. We have the system set up, but they don't work, and maybe they are not as transparent. In a way, so much so that IEBC will declare election results, and someone will question them, and then they will run to court, and the court will deliver a fair judgment, which is not the case here. We have had elections in Uganda whereby the court has all the reasons to nullify the election. All the reasons, even more than we've been witnessing in Kenya. But then the election is not nullified or something of that sort. So I think the main thing that Uganda has to learn from Kenya is building systems. And like I've been saying, systems that look way beyond individuals. Systems that assess the needs of the country and act accordingly. Not systems that are going to work in a way of pleasing the powers that be or something like that. So we are not saying Kenya is a perfect country. We're not saying they're a perfect democracy. They have their mistakes, and we keep witnessing them here and there. But at least we can say a trajectory of progress in what is happening in Kenya. And I think as Uganda, if we can adopt a few of those things in Kenya and we bring them to what we are already having, maybe we can have a better country. It won't take us 5 years to get there. It won't be a walk in the park. We shall have to pull ropes here and there, but I believe as a country, if we can have the right systems in place, and we look at our future as a country, vis-a-vis where we're coming from, we can get where we want to be.
Okay, so Titus, right with the same question. What do you think the other, aside from Uganda? I know right now most people would look at Uganda like a country that has a lot to learn in terms of elections from Kenya. But looking at all the rest of the countries, the other 6 countries, what do you think they have to learn from the Kenyan election? And also secondly, before we even look at what they have to learn from Kenya, do you think Kenya has set up a certain sort of a standard for election in EAC?
First and foremost, Kenya did well. But the funny thing is, was the voter turnout that high? Because, okay, fine, Kenya's election was so peaceful, but again, I believe the moment you have a voter turnout of less than 70–80%, there are so many questions that are left hanging there in the air. We are saying systems, yes, but then are the systems really favorable to us? Are the systems really favorable to Kenya, that even the Kenyans themselves believe in their systems at the end of the day? Possibly yes, and possibly why was the voter turnout that low? But then we cannot take away the good from what was even that low turnout, that they delivered something so consistent that people kept on checking their official website for results, those things, that they really had so much trust in their independent election system, that everything was flowing on so well, that that a country like Burundi, Rwanda, DRC, Tanzania first, before even consider Tanzania, Burundi, South Sudan, and Rwanda, they almost have the same metric. But then some of the things they can learn is you can have a term limit and still have development. You can have a peaceful election and the country will move. That the moment you have an election that is not peaceful, the possibility of losing you as a nation outweighs when you have an unpeaceful election. The funny bit about elections is that we consider an election to be a general thing, but then the beneficiaries of an election, the people contesting, the people around them, and then do these people have the best of interests of their people at heart? If they really had the best of interests at heart, they would avoid and call on their supporters to not have election violence. But when you look at Kenya of 2007, where Raila Odinga was contesting, he did not call for a peaceful aftermath until after it was spiraling out of hand. That then moves us to countries like DRC, whereby the election itself happens in a way whereby we have an election happen. We just have someone, they will have an election, they have an election commission. But again, the question we want is, shall we have independency of electoral commissions? Like there we find that the one of Kenya is independent, though they are still appointed by the president, but then it is still independent. The one of Kenya is independent. Yes, they are still appointed by the president, but then you feel like if it is you who are appointing the electoral commission, he does not have a say, or actually, yes, he backed Odinga, fine, but then there is that sense of independency. But then you are His Excellency Kagame, but then you are the one appointing EC. If there's this mindset that do not bite the hand that feeds you,
Thank you.
So there is, even then, we may say that they're independent, but then they'll have that thing at the back of their mind. That person appointed me.
Do you think the EC of Uganda takes that saying too seriously?
Yes,
too serious. they take it to another level. So I think if DRC could pick a leaf and make, term limits set so many things into action. The moment you have a term limit one, you'll have that even though the president is appointing an electoral commission, it will be independent. It will be independent because they'll not have this mindset that, it is His Excellency Shekedi who appointed me, so I have to serve in his best interests. No, they'll have that sense of autonomy. Or they'll be like, it is High Excellency
Suluhu.
Yes, the president of Tanzania. You still have that independency. Or probably, it is His Excellency Salva Kiir in South Sudan. They'll still that independency. Term limits set a lot of things in action that at times are not so much catered for when there are no term limits. Because the moment, even in the US, the one we praise so much, the moment you appoint Supreme Court judges, and because the moment you appoint them and you leave the office, they have the independency to decide what is best for their people without having that mindset at the back of the day that you have to serve the interests of someone who appointed us.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Titus. Let me bring Elizabeth into the discussion. Still, we are talking about elections still in the different countries within the EAC. We have looked at Kenya, we have looked at these different countries, and we are still looking at what to learn from Kenya. Titus has given his perspective on the different countries, what they have to learn from Kenya. And my question to you is on your perspective. What do you think these different countries should learn from Kenya's election?
Yeah, Kenya's election was, to say, free and fair, but we can't rate it that much. I think we are overrating it, to be honest.
True.
Because it also had some issues. Yeah, if it was that perfect, we wouldn't be having Raila Odinga coming back to petition the election and invalidate it. We wouldn't have a whistleblower come to confess that the server was tampered with.
True.
We wouldn't have,
Some commissioners not signing.
thank you, we wouldn't have some returning officers being killed. There's a lot of loopholes, and basically, I think, when you get something nice for the first time, you want to overrate it. So basically, in the East African community, I think it's the first time we experienced something good, and now we are so excited about it, but it's not that good. Kenya still has a lot to work on its politics. Yes, though we have a lot also to learn from them. One, I think social media should really be independent, very independent. They should be free to air whatever. They should be transparent. They shouldn't be intimidated. In all these East African countries, we see there is ballot fraud. There is voter suppression. There is no transparency in that sense. Yeah, it's called democratic, but it's not in that sense. So yeah, there is something to learn from Kenya, but we shouldn't overrate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Edson, let's shift to something else. The organs of the EAC. We have the different organs. We have the East African Legislative Assembly. I have seen people are already trying to warm up for elections. We have the summit. We even have the court. So let us start with the court. What is the strength? You see, all these organs were put in place to handle different aspects. So what is the strength of this court, having been established in this region?
Thank you. The strength of the court and the rest of the organs of the East African community, yes, they have been established, but like we've been noting, they have not lived up to their expectations. They have not done most of the work that we expected them to do, and they have not lived up to their mandate. Yes, the court has powers and the court has been set up, and you have all these chief justices coming up together and those different things, but what decisions are they influencing on the ground? What decisions are they influencing? What say do they have in the affairs of each of the states that we can see something tangible coming up? Mainly about the court, I can say there is still a lot more to do, because sometimes they will come up with decisions and they cannot be followed. Sometimes they will just not pay attention even when things are happening. Maybe there has been violence somewhere, maybe there have been instances of human rights abuse somewhere, but they say nothing about it because they don't want to point fingers at those different people. And because you have some of these chief justices coming from their different countries and they have been appointed by certain individuals, then they will not point fingers at those individuals when something is not going right. So let's have a court that can stand alone on its own and does not have to be influenced by the political powers that be. And once we get there, I believe we shall have an East Africa that we want.
Okay. So Titus, on that discussion, the organs of the EAC, what is their strength at the moment?
We fight so hard to create job opportunities, and we can really thank the organs for creating jobs. They have really created so many jobs, and very many people are now getting employment. But when it zeroes down to strength, we have an East African Parliament, and that is voted for by the Uganda Parliament, Kenya, and all the member states' Parliament. Are they really, when the moment you have, like, they can have an act of parliament in Uganda, then they set a bill, and it's passed. The East African Parliament, can it really set a bill in place and it will affect DRC? Highly doubt that. We have also other organs that are even student-centered. Can probably, as the East African Students' Union, set up a motion in place and it will affect the entire students' community in the East African region? Not possible. As we stated earlier, we're having an East African Community Federation or Union, in whatever context you call it, that has so many organs that is draining the budget so much that even the budget of the East African community is borrowed, that some member states do not even sustain themselves and provide the money enough for the East African community to run, that we are even working on a borrowed budget to run an East African community that is not delivering up to its mandate. The Chief Justice's group, that, like he stated earlier, we're having courts that do not affect or do not even foster change. We're having entities that are there as job opportunities, but not really necessarily things that are beneficial to the common person. As I stated, are these people really there to benefit the common man, or are they there to benefit themselves? So the moment we change the mindset, the moment we change policies of the entire East African community to favor the common person, even this is the common person, but then if they're really out there to favor growth collectively, other than like the UN will have a summit and then state that we're having a zero carbon emission by 2050, it will not come down to the ground of each member state having the mandate to fulfill that obligation. Now that is the same as this African community. We shall have these organs passing laws or policies, or like the court may probably try someone. But again, the question is, will it zero down to the list or the person who's being implemented to do that at the end of the day? Like Margaret Ziwe is a very good example, former Speaker of the East African Parliament. Impeaching her had to have the consent of all member states, but in a way, they had to have this mindset of Uganda has to agree, Kenya has to agree. Yet it is an East African Parliament. Could the East African Parliament do that individually? So you get to ask yourself so many questions at the end of the day, that are these organs really there to do what they have to do, or to provide jobs to the unemployed?
Okay. Elizabeth, let's now look at the future of the Federation, starting from now going forward, which is my last question to you now. So what do you see as the future of the EAC, looking at the different objectives that the EAC has and the trends within the EAC?
The future of the EAC, like what are you exactly trying to drive at?
What do you see as what do you think the EAC will be like in maybe 10 years from now, 15 years from now? So what is its future that you project when you look at how things are happening within the EAC?
Honestly, I see us going back to 1960 to 1977. We are bound to collapse one more time, and maybe it will be eternal death for this time around. Because we are supposed to be a one community, but look at what is happening within us. We already have trade disputes, which should not really be happening right now. We should be trying to merge and harmonize. We are having countries still having conflicts internally. So this alone is going to mount pressure. We are now like the East African community. Members of this community have instability inside them. So imagine we come up outside into the skirts of the community. We are merging. It's bound to have instability in the time. I foresee it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, and Edson, what do you see as the future of EAC?
The future of EAC, our leaders have been advocating for a federation. I am not a prophet of doom, but what I'm seeing, a federation is not possible in the foreseeable future if the trajectory, if we still progress the way we are progressing right now, federation, a political federation of the East African community is not so possible. Let's build on what we are having right now, and let's perfect what we are having right now. You cannot run before you learn how to walk and crawl and those things. So let's perfect crawling, we perfect walking, then we are going to perfect running. We can't wake up one day and we are launching rockets and those things. So let's perfect what we are having right now and will get us there. Most importantly, let's build systems and an East African community that looks beyond individuals and personalities. And if we can build such systems, then the East African community is going to get to where we have been longing to see it.
Okay, so Titus, my last question to you. How do we make EAC better? Can we save it from the collapse that Elizabeth is talking about?
Maybe I'm more optimistic than being pessimistic. I believe even with the so many shortcomings that we have stated, the very many, if you get realized, we have spent the entire time looking at, we have entirely listed the negatives that we can look. It's very hard to see a positive.
Being a teacher debate.
That's why in the beginning I started with what are the achievements, of the ESA, because sometimes we talk about the failures and we forget that we have some achievements.
So, me, one thing I've liked is that the ESC can't collapse. Basic simple reason is that the people who are employed in those offices will not see their jobs dying. So it's basically that I cannot see my job dying and then I just say that, oh wow, let the ESC collapse. But I believe that in the long run, if we acknowledge and learn from our mistakes, we can be better. Kenya has done it. Personally, them as a nation, Uganda can learn, and then I'm sure that East African bloc can learn. But one thing we have to acknowledge that we cannot achieve what was achieved 10 years in 67, 77. We have to be more open-minded, be more strategic, and he has said, oversee individualism and look at developing the East African bloc as a whole. If we believe in that, and then we believe that, and even involve the youth more. We involve the youth, and then so that these youth have what their community at heart. We can achieve so much. We can achieve so much.
Okay. So thank you so much. We have come to the end of today's debate and today's discussion. So thank you for researching, for this very fruitful and wonderful discussion. So to our viewers, we have come to the end of today's discussion. That is the inter-university debate for this week. As stated in the beginning, we hosted today's students of Busitema University who gave this topic an intellectual discussion, and I would say that they did justice to the topic. Inter-university debate is a forum where university students are able to discuss matters that affect the country and the world at large, especially important matters at hand at that time. And I would like to say thank you to Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV for bringing this inter-university debate. I've been your moderator. My name is Lakay Jinda Fancy. See you again next week, same time. Thank you.